So today we're going to cover basically two things. So we're going to cover at a high level how to think about augmenting yourself with AI, as well as some tactical examples and demos from some really cool stuff Daniel has built. And then the second part is basically open Q&A. So ask Daniel and I anything you want. So just sort of open discussion. A little bit about Daniel. He's a longtime great friend of mine. So I'm a huge fan of him as a person as well as his work. He runs Unsupervised Learning, which is one of the biggest and best security newsletters, in my opinion. He recently keynoted OWASP Global AppSec USA, which is pretty cool. He was previously a security leader at Apple, Robinhood, and other places. But recently, the past couple of years, he's been focusing on AI. So both applying it to security, where he does some consulting work with companies, as well as using AI for human flourishing, which is what we're going to be focusing on a bit today. And just a fun anecdote, basically every week, sometime between 10 p.m. and midnight, I get a text from Daniel that's basically like, dude, I just built the sickest thing ever. And then he sends me a screenshot of some cool new dashboard or something he's built. So today we're going to be covering a number of those things that he's been building because he's constantly tweaking and improving his stack. Yeah, with a focus on using AI to augment yourself. So that's a little bit of context, but yeah, let's jump right into it. Daniel, I pass it to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Clint. Appreciate the intro. And thanks for having me. I appreciate the time here.
For sure.
So I want to talk about why I built Kai, some stuff you need to know before you can build a similar system if you want to do that. Core principles and engineering that I put into it, like the design concepts and everything, many of which are actually different than Claude Code natively. So the Kai system is built on Claude Code, but it's kind of designed to be agnostic and not just have the base stuff that's in Claude Code. I've extended it quite a bit. We're going to do a deep dive on an actual skill. We're going to do a quick demo, and I'm going to show you how to get started on your own. And we got an FAQ, which you could take a picture of. I don't think I'm going to read through that one. And then, as Clint said, we have time for discussion and QA afterwards. So like Clint also said, I want to apologize beforehand because this could be like an hour for each section. And in fact, when I do it other places, it is actually much longer. So we will have to go pretty fast. But I'm going to go in more detail about a lot of these things than I've done anywhere else. So that should be fun to get into. But the goal is ultimately to give you enough detail and direction to build your own system like this. So why I made it in the first place, the main reason is because I just wanted to get better overall at everything that I do. I don't like being surprised by things. I like understanding how things work. And when I'm surprised, that means I didn't know how it worked at whatever level. So that's basically like an AI augmentation system was the first thing I thought about at the end of 22 when this all went crazy. I also think regular jobs are going away. I talk about this post-corporate world, and I'm really worried about that for humans. And I think the best way to get ready for that is to get really, really good at being a human. And that means understanding yourself and using AI to magnify yourself. So this is my model for thinking about how AI is going to impact the job market and how much it's going to, I guess, get inside of the workflow of how we do work and eventually take over more and more of that. And I use this to sort of keep pressure on myself, kind of thinking about where it's all going and basically where am I and how ready am I and how ready are other people as well. So it's 5 levels. Before 2022, we didn't have any AI, right? So we basically did all this work ourselves. 23 to 25, roughly, I mean, this is all general, right? This is like the first level of AI. It's chatbots. Everyone understands this. It's like you ask a question, you get a thing back, and then you could do manual work with that thing, which is still really valuable. And you notice at the bottom here, we're inside of the section for human-centered work. So the first 3 sections here are largely human-focused. And what we're entering into now is like this whole agentic thing, which, by the way, I hate the word agentic. I think it's a good word. I think it's a cool word, but everything is agentic now. Got agentic toaster ovens or whatever. It's being overused. But this has been going on for a couple of years. I think it's starting now. Yeah, I think it sort of started at the end of 24 a little bit. And then they were like, oh, 2025 is going to be the year of the agent. Turns out that was kind of true. And that's this layer here, right? That's level 2. And the next 2 we could talk about later if you want to hit me up afterwards, but they're less human focused in terms of how much of the work is being done. And Kai and this system that I'm going to show you is firmly right here in the level 2. So what can you do to get started? So the most important thing is understanding, you can't just start building, right? A lot of people try to just start building random stuff inside of a system like this, and then they try a few things, they don't really work that well, and they kind kind of abandoned them. And I taught a course on this 4 times so far. And I always start with the same thing, which is who are you? What do you care about? What do you actually want to get good at? And how can technology save you time so you can actually do more of the stuff you care about and less of the stuff that's just like busy work? So for me, this is roughly what mine looks like. 1 through 4 is definitely like the most important to me: reading, thinking, writing, and discussing things. 5 is what I've been spending most of my time on, which is building. This used to be known as coding, by the way. I've stopped saying, like when I talk to Clint or whatever, what have you been doing? Coding, right? Because that's what I was doing before. And now it's like I'm actually thinking and writing, which is producing the coding. It's a weird abstraction. I also do a lot of consulting for customers, building a bunch of products. For physical stuff, I play table tennis, like the crazy kind where you're really far away from the table. I play drums, and I'm getting into kickboxing. And perhaps most importantly, I orient a lot of my life around trying to help other people do the same thing that I'm doing here, which is just self-discovery and like self-magnification. So the system itself and its design. So these are the principles that I built Kai on top of and what sets it apart from Cloud Code. Cloud Code has some of this naturally built in, but I've kind of augmented it for the Kai system to be a lot more of these things with a heavy focus on these principles. So what we're going to do is go one by one through these and talk about them as a concept and show you what it looks like inside the system. So they go roughly in order of importance, and this is definitely the most important one. Even though it's kind of invisible, or it's become less talked about. So basically, if you remember back to early 24, I don't know, maybe in 23 as well, it's hard to actually remember because it flows together, but a lot of companies were talking about prompting. Oh, you got to learn how to prompt. So prompt engineering was the big word, right? Put out the Fabric project, which is a whole bunch of crowdsourced prompts, and that was just kind of the thing that you did. AI was heavily associated with prompting. And in my opinion, prompting never became less important. In fact, I think it's more important than ever now. I think it's just more hidden because there's lots of other shiny things that people are talking about. The other reason is because AI is doing a lot of that prompting for us. The way I think about this is clear thinking is basically the center of everything, and clear thinking becomes clear writing, and then clear writing is essentially what prompting is. And that becomes really good AI. So a good heuristic for this is like, can you explain this to yourself, especially to yourself like 6 months later when you might not have remembered what you actually built? Can you explain it to others? And if you can't, then AI really can't understand it either, right? When the AI is confused, that's when everything goes sideways. So I think prompting is still like the most important thing to AI because at the end of the day, it's all language, it's all instructions, so it's all prompting. So what this actually means in practice is I've spent many thousands of hours at this point working on my whole structure. I don't know why this thing is 7 gigs. I actually took it down from 10 gigs, but that's a lot of text. That's not actually the scaffolding because that would be a nightmare and nothing would be able to parse it. So there's a lot of outputs and other stuff, but the system is definitely growing. And the most important directories inside of here are things like skills and hooks and history, which we're going to talk about. So this leads really well into the next one, which is the scaffolding is more important, in my opinion, than the model. Now, there's some exceptions to this. And all the news, of course, is about the new models when they get released. You know, Gemini 3 recently, Opus 4.5 recently. But I've always been team scaffolding, and I continue to be team scaffolding. Obviously, it's best to have both, right? If you have really good models, it magnifies the scaffolding. And if you have really good scaffolding, it magnifies the models. But if I had to choose between the latest model with not very good scaffolding or excellent scaffolding with a model from 6 months ago or even a year ago or even 18 months ago, honestly, I would definitely pick the latter.
And a quick note on this. Yeah, so I totally agree with Daniel about the scaffolding. One thing, so I spent a lot of time reading and thinking about people who are using AI for vulnerability detection, for example, like analyzing source code or scanning running systems. And I think it's difficult to say like a given model can or can't do this because, again, to Daniel's point, like the scaffolding around it makes such a huge impact. Like if you see OpenAI's Aardvark or DeepSleep or CodeMender from Google, basically they are giving all these sorts of tools and implement orchestration layers like around the models, which allow them to perform orders of magnitude better on like the same task. So when someone says this current model can or can't do something, it's kind of actually hard to know that for sure, given just better orchestration and context management and things like that can cause meaningfully different outcomes. So I think scaffolding is huge. So yeah, I think that's a key point. So I just wanted to like emphasize that. Okay, yeah, back to you.
Yeah, I think those are all good points. Another one is the AI XCC competition. Trail of Bits really crushed it there. They did a lot of scaffolding there, the Atlanta team as well. So good examples of that. So my skills directory is probably the most important center of the scaffolding. Currently have like 65 skills in here. A lot of these are just very pointed at my own stuff that not really useful to other people, but a number of these are just core and just essential to everything I do. Next one is the last of my three central philosophies for the system. And this one is to be as deterministic as possible, right? So what does that mean? It means in practice, basically code before prompts is what that really turns into. If I have anything that I can do in code, I do it in code first. I don't even use AI at all. And if you think about it this way, Kai is more like a tech orchestration system, not really an AI system. Because I had something kind of similar before even AI. It obviously wasn't as good, but when you add AI on top of it, it really magnifies it. But it's more of an orchestration framework. This is my art skill, for example, which we're going to talk about more, and the tools directory within that skill. And this is just deterministic regular code, right? Anything that my art skill does is actually running code at the end of it, right? At the end of the day, it's actually just deterministic code. And that provides as much consistency and control as possible. And also has the upside of not involving AI at all for the step, which saves a bunch of tokens and usage and everything. This one I've broken out just because it's so important, but really it's the same thing we just talked about. Code before prompts. I'm not really sure what my current percentage of this is, like 80 versus 20. I think I don't know, curious what you think, Clint, what this balance should be, like the ideal balance. But I feel like it should be mostly deterministic with like AI wrapping it. 80-20, I don't know. I'll have to do more thinking on that and see how it plays out.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think if there's something that can be done programmatically, deterministically, I think code is the right solution for it because it's like cheaper and you know you're going to get the answer you expect. In the past, creating that code maybe has been time or cost prohibitive, but now with like Claude Code and other similar coding agents, like creating the deterministic code can be done in a fraction of the time. So yeah, I think it depends on the domain. When you need like a fuzzy answer that's sort of difficult to solve generically, completely deterministically, then maybe sort of some sort of prompt and code system is better. But yeah, I think the core intuition here is like, if you can solve it deterministically, like probably that's the better solution. And maybe you vibe your way to like code that does it. But yeah, trying to solve everything with prompts, at least as of today, is going to be inefficient, costly. And like if you were like, find all the routes in this repo, you're going to find a lot of them, but Claude Code or whatever system is going to miss some of them. So if you can do that with like another tool that you know is going to work, it's just better. But yeah, you were saying about Anthropic?
Yeah, Anthropic came out with a thing about this, actually kind of throwing shade at their own MCP. Like they invented MCP and they're like, hey, you might want to actually just do this in TypeScript and use the MCP to get the service that you want to use, turn that into TypeScript and actually run that instead. Because then you're not calling all these tokens before and after. You're just getting the results and then you can use the results to give to AI. So I thought it was really cool. And within like a little while of them releasing that, I upgraded a couple of my MCPs to not use MCP anymore. So this next one is specifications, tests, and evals. And this is also playing at the whole concept of determinism and consistency. So there's a big tendency in AI to use vibes. This is just like agentic, everything is vibes. Vibe hacking now, vibe marketing, of course, vibe coding. Big thing Clint and I actually talk about a lot is how do we know any of this is working? Right? How do you actually test any of this stuff? How do we actually get consistency from what we build? This is the skill.md for my development skill. And you can see I'm starting with spec-driven development. And this is roughly based off of GitHub's really excellent project called Spec Kit. And I basically simplified it because it was a little bit too involved. But first you create specs, then you create plans, then you write tests, then you write code. And that's the flow that that system uses. And I'm always optimizing this, but this is the general flow that I follow. So So the next one I've been obsessed with since being in college in like the 1990s. And shout out to my buddy Kundi, who showed me the command line for the first time, which honestly, it might have been one of the best days of my life. When I found out I could pipe the output of one command into the input of the next, I mean, it truly tripped me out. And I feel like I've been building systems based on that concept ever since. So the way it materializes inside of this system is I try to have each container do one thing well, and I build different skills to call each other instead of replicating that functionality inside of each one. So I've got a number of examples of this within Kai, but this is a red team skill. And this red team can actually hit a network architecture, an application architecture, threat modeling. It could do like all sorts of different stuff, but I often use it to attack ideas that I have to see like blind spots if I'm missing something. But the red team skill calls a first principles skill and breaks that down further into other pieces, right? So it works in a flow to really break open ideas and attack the ideas. This is another really cool example, which is called LifeLog, which pulls off of my necklace pendant, which I'm wearing right now. I could show when I turn on the camera. It's basically a thing that I can turn on when I'm walking, and I could say, hey, new idea or new blog, or hey, I should do a piece of content on this or whatever. And then I just talk and it captures it. And then when I get back, I could say, okay, that thing I just said when I was walking, take this and do that with it, right? So it goes and pulls the content from the transcript, pulls out the section, summarizes it. From there, I could do research on it. I could blog on it. I could do whatever. I could red team the idea, for example, and it's all done using natural language prompt, just me talking to Kai, and it cross calls all those different ones. I also want to mention real quick custom slash commands. These are commands you could just type / in Claude Code to run, and these are also calling one or multiple. The CSE one is calling create story explanation, which is a skill, and it's just another way to call into skills as well, worth mentioning. So if I take a piece of content I want to get information from, like this is a great article on TLDRsec, and this was from Jason Chan, who built this security program at Netflix. So you could take that and you could do like this / CSE 5, which will give me 5 levels of explanation of what this thing is about. And this is what it does when it's working. It actually uses Fabric here, which I forgot about that, but it uses Fabric Switch U, which actually uses Gina AI to do this, and it pulls down the markdown for the thing, and then it runs the CSE skill and it returns the results in 5 levels. And cool little thing for Kai is Kai also updates the tab name inside of the Kitty terminal to be the result and reads it in Kai's voice, which we'll see later. Next one is engineering or SRE principles, which is also part of this determinism story, which I feel like I might move that up to be like the most important one. But my background is hacking in like the security sense, but also in the more pure sense of like building and creating and breaking things, right? So I've been a crappy programmer since the early 2000s, but I've never been an actual software engineer, right? And there's a huge difference. As anyone who's been both knows, there's a huge difference between an SWE and someone who programs. So what I'm doing now is I'm learning a lot of engineering stuff that I should have learned in college and trying to build that into the DNA of the system, which usually manifests as tests and evals and stuff like that. The way it mostly manifests is through like the development skill, where I'm going through, true tested engineering practices of like building plans, test-driven development, and all that sort of thing. This is a thing I talk to Clint a lot about. Most people don't know this because he never talks about it, but Clint Loki is a PhD in computer science, and it definitely shows when he starts talking about tests and evals. You will see him light up like a Christmas tree. So that's always fun.
For context, a lot of Daniel's skills and prompts and things like that, some of them have like this detailed backstory about maybe the person's persona and their goals in life. And I'm like, Daniel, does that help? And he's like, vibes, baby. But then also like test them rigorously in practice to make sure that they work consistently.
Yeah, and I've got some examples of that when we talk about the voice system. I put all this effort into it, and I'm always wondering myself, and then especially when I talk to Clint, I'm like, okay, what if I had this same exact prompt without all this personality stuff? Yeah, so we're doing a bunch of eval stuff so we can test this stuff at scale. This one is super cool. This is a relatively new addition to the Kai system. So not only am I trying to write code for as much as possible in the system, but I'm actually trying to have that be executed via CLI instead of just calling the code and having the model try to figure out how to actually run it. So I love the command line so much. Terminal is my favorite place to live. And I love the fact that there's documentation, there's flags, there's switches, there's options, right? And it means you know how to use it. You know how to use a command line by running the help command. And you know who else loves that? AI loves that. AI absolutely loves when it doesn't have ambiguity in what it's supposed to do. So going all the way back to the concept of clarity and AI not being confused, like there's nothing more clear than how to use a command line tool, assuming it's well documented. So I've got a command line tool for launching Kai, actually. When I type K, that used to just be a ZSH alias, but now I've got an actual command line tool for it. And the most useful switches, I think, are actually the switch M switch to dynamically load MCPs. And shout out to Indie Dev Dan for this one. He's a full developer who's doing AI stuff on YouTube. You should definitely check him out. He also did this, and I was like, oh, that's a great idea. So I built the command line tool to be able to do that. And here's the actual command for generating images using my art skill. So I can pass in a model, but the default is actually Nano Banana Pro for obvious reasons. It's just incredibly good. But I have all these different options, and this is what Kai actually uses to generate images. So this next one is a high-level flow for a concept that solidifies a lot of what we've been talking about. Is just a way of thinking about how to organize the entire system. Basically, you figure out what you want to do. You figure out if you can do it in code. Then if I can, I build a command line tool around that. Then I use prompting to run the command line tool. And then I use skills or agents to call it or to run it in parallel. And that's kind of the flow and the structure. And this is basically how all of these skills work, is going from the top level goal all the way down to the code-based implementation. This next one is super fun. It is also super useful. Basically, I have a whole bunch of capabilities within Kai that are used to update Kai himself, right? So it's like self-update, self-healing, self-improvement. And not just like a little component or a module or something, but like the system overall. So you've seen all different components of the scaffolding. We have skills, we have workflows within the skills that execute things. We have code in the command line tools. And then we have the models, right? We also have different services that could be called via MCP or API or whatever. So the best example of this is I have an upgrade skill. I guess that's a good name for it if it's doing upgrades. So the upgrade skill, it's a universal skill that it hits multiple sources on the internet. And I'm looking at those sources because they're constantly releasing stuff that I cannot keep up with manually. And I don't want Kai to get behind. So when I say run the upgrade skill, it will go and find all these different sources. It'll parse the latest content. It will review all of Kai's documentation. There's a single file that documents all of Kai. So Kai will read that, understand how he works, and then understand all the updates that it just pulled from different sources, and then look for opportunities to improve. So one of the sources it looks at is the Anthropic engineering blogs. All of their releases on GitHub. I mean, they're releasing stuff constantly, like every day, multiple times during the day. There's no way I could possibly follow it all. I also do this for YouTube channels. Somebody talks about a new technique, automatically parse it and bring it in. And security-wise, I do it for security research as well. So like all the talks that Clint puts out, when he puts out like, oh, here's the latest videos from so-and-so conference or whatever, I parse those and update my testing methodology if there's like a new technique. So here's an actual example of me running this a little while ago. So Anthropic had a release saying how they could improve routing within skills using this keyword, use when. And they basically emphasize, hey, look, you need to be using this because if you're not getting your skills to function the way that you want, they're not being triggered properly, you need to make sure you have this in the front matter. So Kai ran the upgrade skill, found this, and came back with this as the top recommendation. I said, okay, do it. And within like 5 minutes, the entire Kai system was upgraded with this piece of functionality. And after that, skills worked way better. So as I was making this, like prepping for the conversation here, I said, look in our history for learnings. Because everything that I do for an upgrade actually across the system, it's all captured in the history system and it's broken down into structures, which we'll actually see a little bit later. But this basically looked up our archive of things that we've done to learn over time. And that's exactly what it found. It found this use when thing. All right, so this one is absolutely crucial. I should probably raise it in priority as well. Custom skill management. So this is probably the most significant thing that I did on top of Claude Code. It's just a completely different structure. So skills are already really good inside of Claude Code. It's pretty good at routing by itself, but what I did was add a supplemental system that's more explicit about the routing. And I'm getting like, I don't know, 95, 98%. I don't know the actual number. Me and Clint will have to figure out the actual number. We need, rigor around this thing. But it's basically routing in the system prompt, which goes to a routing table of workflows that go to specific prompts. And then within the directory, there's also a tools directory that the workflows actually call. And like we talked about, those are ideally deterministic code as opposed to prompts. So what this does is it produces way better results for being able to do multiple things inside of a category, such as art. And I'm going to show the art skill later. But what it does is it allows me to just speak in plain language and get exactly pretty much what I asked for. Last couple here. Custom history system. We touched on this one a little bit, but basically I have sessions, learnings, research decisions, all sorts of different categories here. And when we get done doing anything, if any agent does anything, if I do it, if Kai does it, if any sub-agent does it, Kai thinks about what we did, turns that into a summary, and writes it into this history system. And that's part of the reason I've got like 6 gigs of stuff grown over time here. But file system is cheap and file system is fast. So I like this way better than RAG for most things. This is what the directory actually looks like. And it basically allows me to understand where we've been, where we are, and where we're going, right? Because I hate making the same mistake over and over. I especially have a system like this for bugs, calling out bugs that keep coming up when I'm building web applications. So I could say, capture a learning on this, capture a learning on this, and have that be crystallized into a thing that Kai can then use to upgrade the development skill so we don't do that anymore. And this last one is kind of flourish, to be honest, but it can be useful as well. I basically have a fully customized voice system for Kai and all the different agents that we use within it. So we've got architects, engineers, researchers, QA testers, interns. They all have different personalities. This is the part that I'm not sure how much this is actually helping, but it's fun. And they all have different approaches to their work too, right? Some are like library scientists, some are like super curious, and they have different voice characteristics based on their personalities. So what this means is while the agents are talking to me or to each other, you can actually hear emotion in what they're talking about. If they come back with a finding and they're excited about it, like you can actually hear that in the voice rendition. I still need to do more evals on this, as I talked about. So the whole thing goes through a voice server, which we have, which is part of the Kai system. It goes through 11 Labs API, then it gets read out on the local system in the particular voice of that particular agent. And it's mostly just pretty cool, like I said, but I do get use out of it because if I'm building like 20 different things off on the side in their own sessions, they can be reporting back with what they did. And I could actually tell by their voices who they are, and plus they give me a summary of what they've done. And these are all the different agents that we have. Like I said, we got engineers, pen testers, all kinds of different folks in here. So that is the overview of the system. And I just want to reiterate that the whole point of all of this is to go from the left to the right here. A human on the left who has human interests and human goals, using a system that does all this different stuff with tech and AI or whatever, with, again, the output to be human outcomes that help humans. So it's humans, tech in the middle, it's not important, and then humans on the right side as well. So I want to do a deep dive on a real skill, or at least just show it live in a quick demo. All right, so first we're going to invoke Kai.
Kai here, ready to go.
All right, so KS is to go to the skills directory, Kai skills, cd art, and inside of here, we have that level. We have that structure. We have workflows and we have tools. So if we go inside of workflows, this is what that looks like. We've got annotated screenshots. We've got aphorisms. I haven't even tried that one. Comics. This is like an XKCD type thing, although I didn't use the Randall Monroe style because I thought that was kind of rude. Comparisons, essay. Essay I use all the time. It's actually what produces art for my site now. Frameworks.md is actually for talking about like architecture frameworks. Maps, mermaid diagrams. This one makes it look like mermaid. Stats, taxonomies, technical diagrams is another one that I use all the time. Timelines and visualize is actually just, if I say visualize so-and-so and I give Kai input, he will decide which of these to use or which combination of these to use. And then if we go into the tools directory, we can see these here. I think I showed one of these already. So no need to show that. But what I want to do,
Hi here, ready to go.
let's have somebody give a concept, somebody from chat to give a concept.
Okay, we have a couple purple dogs skiing down the mountain, Ghost in the Machine style, timeline horizon for the AI revolution, trees are younger than sharks, adopting UTCP, pig with a jetpack, longing for my lost youth. Do any of those AI and humans living together?
A human story arc. I like that one, and I love the trees are younger than sharks. That blew me away. Sadly, I learned that only like 2 years ago. I had to Google multiple places because I thought it was fake news. Okay, I want you to visualize a human story arc. So basically all the way from, I guess, coming out of the ocean, assuming you believe in that sort of thing, and then moving through different stages of development, agriculture, I don't know, we could talk about warfare, we could talk about science, we could talk about whatever you want to put in here, but basically just show an arc and actually show where we're currently at, and then move beyond that as well and show other parts like the AI transformation or what comes after that. All right, so that was captured using dictation, which is how I do 99% of everything now. And we're going to see what Kai comes up with.
Yeah, shout out Whisper Flow.
Absolutely. I think I'm about to cross 600,000 words for Whisper Flow.
Does Whisper Flow have different tiers, like you are a certified yapper or
Yes, it does. You can actually set, if you want to do formal, I always have mine set to formal. I like to capitalize the first word and use a period rather than the casual one is all lowercase all the time.
While this is working, Daniel, a couple of questions that have popped up a couple times. People curious about the overall cost of this. So maybe the like Claude Code costs for running Kai. Obviously, you're using Whisperflow and various other services like Nano Banana from Google for generating images. Yeah, I'm curious, maybe if you could concisely say like, here's the main tech stack and like approximate maybe monthly costs.
Yeah, it's a great question. So first of all, Kai uses lots of different AIs inside. So he's calling oftentimes Google stuff, like this art stuff is going to use Google. I use OpenAI stuff sometimes, but these are call outs from the base, which is Claude Code. On Claude Code, I'm using the maximum, which is $200 a month. So I would say that my usual cost for using Kai is less than $250 per month.
Cool. That makes sense. Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
All right. So look at that. Bun run. By the way, Anthropic just bought Bun, which I'm super excited about. But you see, now he's using the art tool, the generate.ts, which is the command line tool to generate using Nano Banana Pro. Any other questions? Yeah, $250 absolutely is cheap. Hey, what's up, Rowan? Oh yeah, with 11 labs, that's a good point. I didn't add that on. Maybe that's like another $20. I think that's also pretty cheap. I have only hit my Claude limit once, and it was actually a couple of days ago when I was going absolutely nuts for the entire weekend. And then it switches over to using a key instead of using the subscription, and that will hurt you very quickly if you're not inside the subscription. I think I worked for maybe an hour and it cost me, I think like $70.
Yeah, I think something Aaron mentioned in the chat, but I think thinking as like a person, you're like, yeah, 250 to 300 per month is like a lot. But if you're thinking of it from like a business cost point of view and you're like, well, how much more output do I have? How many more things do I accomplish? Am I doing things that might lead to additional revenue or things like that? So for example, you do a lot of security consulting. So if you're like, yes, this costs me X amount of money, but then I deliver work, which I charge like this much for. So it's like, you're still making more money than it is costing. So I think that's also a useful frame.
Yeah, completely agree. This is pretty interesting. It's kind of bunched up on the side over here. This is definitely not using my technical diagram. Are we making multiple? Cool. Oh, when I said visualize, I also have a visualization skill, and that produces D3 graphs. So I think that's what he's trying to do there. Yeah, this one's pretty interesting. I'm actually curious. I want to do a different one.
Hi here, ready to go.
Use the technical diagram workflow to make this one inside of the art skill. I think that would be a pretty cool visual. I put a lot of effort into that workflow recently, so I want to see how he does there. Oh, I forgot to show something. This is how I see what Kai is actually working on. So this Daniel here, you can see my prompt and you can see that Kai is working on a thing. We got the stages that it's doing, AI transformation, current, post-AGI, cosmic, unknown future. So that's how it broke down the different pieces to visualize. And then, yeah, this is my observability system for watching what the different agents are doing. This is a custom interface that I built. Obviously, I wouldn't release because it's too cool, except for it's already released. It's already in the project.
Yeah, is that in the PAI repo?
It is.
Oh, I actually didn't know that till just now. Oh,
yeah,
snap.
and I just just updated it so it has all this new UI stuff. And so check this out. Also, a UI workflow, it shows the activities of what it's working on. It shows the different skills, shows the different tools that are being used. It actually obfuscates if there's keys being used. It won't show the keys in the flow as well, just in case I'm doing a YouTube video or a webinar.
So a bunch of people, both in the normal chat as well as the Q&A, are asking about like costs. You already talked about that a little bit, but I guess I just wanted to convey if you wanted to do a blog post on like a deeper dive into like example monthly costs for like specific services and workflow and stuff like that. Seems like there were 5 to 10 questions about that, maybe more.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could definitely do that.
And then there were broadly some questions about, Emmy asked about sort of like the owning your own AI in terms of investing in GPUs to run local models. Should you buy your own hardware and run local models versus relying on third-party providers? Other related questions I would say are like, well, could you do the same approach using like Codex or Gemini CLI? And what made you choose Claude Code versus like Open Code? So there's like a couple of questions around which models and like tooling to use and why.
Yeah, great question. So Claude Code, in my opinion, has the best scaffolding. We already talked about the scaffolding and how important it is, but it's just, to me, vastly superior to any of the other options in terms of like an overall infrastructure to work from within. The way that I call, because I saw a number of people ask that question, the way that I call is via command line. So Gemini is a tool. Gemini is a command line tool. Codex is a command line tool. For example, I have a Gemini researcher. Gemini researcher uses Gemini, and then it uses my Google account to do a deep research using Google Deep Research, because I want that to be a whole separate ecosystem of basically how Google thinks about search and how it has its own structure and biases and stuff like that. I have a Grok one. Oh, Nano Banana is down. That would explain it. That's why you pre-record demos.
While you're waiting, question from John Roberts. So if you're not CLI savvy or a programmer, how far can you get? Clear thinking and writing doesn't require a CLI, but the next steps do code before prompt, for instance. Yeah, I guess broadly advice for people who are not CLI savvy or a programmer.
Yeah, I would say, I'm not writing these CLI tools. Kai is writing most of this code. I have the ability to go into the code and fix it or change it or modify it. But more and more, I am using my interaction with Kai to change the code. And I'm using my scaffolding to control what code gets made in what way. But I'm not over here spending time writing code. That would massively slow me down. Honestly, it would be worse code compared to Kai writing code that is controlled by me and my scaffolding. So I would say you should not be intimidated. You should not be intimidated by I'm not a coder or whatever. The one thing I'm trying to do with Pi is make it clear you can be completely non-technical, because again, I come in here and I could basically say anything that doesn't involve a model that's currently down. So let's create a human arc story using one of the other models that you have access to, using the technical diagram. I can't remember. I think I have Replit in there with a few models. So look at this. Over here, it shows that the art skill is running. And over here, it says the art skill is running. And then in the tab up here, it says human arc story creation, which is also in the visual. But just to complete that point, do not be intimidated. The whole point of Pi is that you should be able to be non-technical and come in here and do all this stuff. Yeah, so you can see he can pivot to using an OpenAI model. I haven't used that one. I don't know if the key is good.
One thing I was curious about, though, Vishal asked, what controls or guardrails do you have in place to protect Kai from performing malicious activities? Especially because you're like, scraping websites, which could have arbitrary content. You have a lot of surface area to potential prompt injection, for example.
Yep. So that one I'm not going to talk too much about, just because I don't want to talk about the controls that much. But I've basically got 4 to 5 layers of different defenses put in there to block that kind of stuff. A lot of it involves
Human story arc diagram generated with GPT image 1, open for review.
Yeah, so this one is not bad. I like this. It's nowhere near as good as a Nano Banana Pro, in my opinion, but still looks pretty cool. To finish answering that question, a lot of Kai understanding what our purpose is, what Kai's purpose is for us in the ecosystem, and then recognizing things that are attempting to hijack that purpose. So a lot of things around prompt injection. I'm also using the Anthropic controls for different types of control of tools, what it can and cannot call, especially in conjunction with a request which is out of character. So I've got a bunch of that stuff built in. I guarantee that I could probably break it, and a lot of other AI-oriented pen testers could probably break it as well. I would guess it's probably an 85 to 95% decent defense. And then that's the type of thing I just keep improving as well.
For some additional thoughts on that, I think Anthropic shipped like a Claude Code sandbox that tries to sandbox things by default. And then to your point, you have different subagents for different tasks. So one may be like a researcher or something that is talking to the internet, whether that's like YouTube transcript or scraping from a web page or things like that. And the capabilities that you give that agent could be mostly like read-only-ish type things. And then maybe you just write a summary of like the plan of what you're going to implement or a distillation of whatever you read. And then what actually implements or makes file system changes or has access to execution or things like that on your computer could be like a separate agent that just like reads whatever was written by the previous step, which you could as a human read first before just sort of blindly executing. So basically similar to Simon Willison's blog post about I forget what he exactly called it, like the dangerous or the critical three, basically having separation between external sources that you don't control and then like executing things locally. You could have like a human review in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's all very smart.
Yeah, lethal trifecta. Thank you, everyone in the chat.
So I'm sure everyone, or mostly everyone, probably already guessed this, but this was the actual prompt that was used to generate all the art for the entire presentation. And this is using the technical diagram workflow. Yeah, all that stuff that you've been seeing. Kai made all that stuff. So getting started on your own. When I say that, like, the purpose of all this for me is to really enable people to be the best versions of themselves and like magnify themselves, like, I'm actually quite serious. So the whole thing, it's all open sourced. There's a whole bunch of skills that aren't migrated over. Most of them are just complete garbage to anyone else. There's a few that are good for other people that I just have to be careful about how I move them over. Talk about stress. Every time I push from Kai to Pi, it's like one of the most stressful things because I've got, sensitive stuff in here and stuff that's, that should not be shared in a public repo. So I've got pre-commit hooks. I've got all sorts of defenses to make sure I don't share anything private, hopefully. But I know for a fact that that's going to happen. So I've also got a key rotation routine I could execute if necessary. So the project is called Pi, which unfortunately rhymes with Kai. Kai was just my first role-playing game, and it just happens to rhyme with Kai. It's unfortunate, but it is all out there for people to use and download and play with. So these are some of the most common questions that I get, and I'm not going to go through these. I think we might have touched most of them in the content or in the questions, but if you want to just take a picture of this or screenshot or whatever, those might be helpful. And with that, I want to say thanks for your time. You can hit this QR code to connect with me and different projects I'm working on. Got a whole bunch of stuff coming out in January to get a lot more of this like on demand inside of videos. I also help companies like do this and train their people to do this at work. So you can hit me up if you're interested in that. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Maybe here's a quick one from Henry. Can you speak to the role of Git and GitOps in your workflows?
Yeah, I would say everything is Git, heavy Git usage. I've got a bunch of security controls there as well. The context management also matters there a lot. Kind of the big thing you need to worry about is you got 5 tabs open, and they're all separate sessions. They're all doing really cool stuff. And maybe you go into the wrong one and you say, yeah, great work. Go ahead and push this. But maybe it got confused about something that happened earlier. It thinks this content should be pushed to that repo. So I got a whole bunch of defenses around that to make sure, okay, what is your current working directory? What is the history of our conversation? Therefore, what directory do I probably mean when I say that? So a lot of scaffolding around that. But in general, I'm a huge file system. Git work trees are also really powerful. So you have separate branches on separate file systems doing different experiments. And the one you like is the one that gets brought over and merged. I would say I use Git very, very heavily. Good question.
There's a question. Are you going to do a deep dive course or training or something on this at some point?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing augmented since 2023, early 2023. I did a AI course and I'm converting that over to be an online version instead of live. So the previous 4 were all live and it doesn't scale and you have to be there and it's just like, it's not great. So that's going to be what I release in January as part of this Human 3.0 program that I'm doing. So it's going to be more modular too, where you could just like watch the history system video or you could watch the skill building video and stuff like that. But also talking about the overall arc of like how to get into this if you're not technical, how to do this for work, lots of different stuff like that.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, yeah. Question from Vlad. How do you decide which workflows to automate, that is, add to Kai to get the highest ROI? So, how do you avoid wasting time on some complicated skill or flow that's going to take too many iterations to make it work right? And I think there was another question in the chat about how do you avoid spending all your time yak shaving versus actually building new things and making progress?
Yeah, that's a challenge. It's a challenge because I love the tooling. Like you're also talking to someone who spent hundreds of hours on their NeoVim config. So I'm also a tech nerd, but I also think humans matter more than tech, right? So I'm 80% human, but also 20% tech nerd. So the answer is sometimes I overfocus on the tech and I have to remind myself, hey, what are you doing? That's why I have a bunch of sticky notes in front of me. I have a whole telos system for staying on track and like goals and stuff like that. I think it's fine to nerd out and to go crazy with new tech and learning stuff, as long as you could pull yourself back and get back on track to the goal.
Yeah, and just to be open about it, I think like Daniel and I have this conversation often where we were chatting about evals recently, and I was like, oh, here's some services that are like these built out eval platforms. And he's like, well, what if I built my own eval platform from scratch? And then like one day later sends me a screenshot of like a working version. So I think, yeah, it's easy to rabbit hole with this stuff. In terms of priorities, I think if you do like a time audit, like where am I spending my time today and what is low value versus high value, like the things that are taking a lot of time that are not maybe uniquely suited to you or your role. So lots of time, low value are good places to try to automate and streamline, or things that happen often that seem easy to streamline. It's also useful. Yeah,
totally. It's a Telos, Telos. It's also a GitHub repo. A lot of the stuff that I've talked about is on GitHub. It's basically a system for managing goals, priorities, challenges to your goals. It's like alignment towards a particular goal. So you could use it at work. You could use it like to run a family. You could use it to run a United Federation of Planets. It really scales to any different size.
Oh yeah, I think some other broad questions are like they see your setup and then they see the public PAI. Let me describe it and you can feel free to correct me. My understanding is you have like PAI and this is your personal thing, like what you're working on, and then you are taking the generalizable public safe to share pieces of it and putting it into PAI, which is kind of a subset of Kai, or at least the public version of it that's not the rapidly changing stuff that you're working on day to day.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm even putting like the super high value stuff, like the art skill, for example, is up there. And a lot of people told me, do not put that up there. That is like a massive advantage for you as a content creator, because I could basically feed it a blog post and it makes the perfect art image. And if you modify your aesthetic file and you say what you want it to look like in the aesthetic file, your PI system will do that for you. But my answer to that person was, well, I want more people to be content creators. Like that's the whole point of this entire thing. So like I am essentially trying to get everything that I can into the public version as fast as possible. Like I'm generally handling the issues and PRs inside of PI within hours or a couple of days. Try to do it as fast as possible.
Related question from Brand. Do you have any good workflows for updating your personal PI? So basically you have like the public PI and then you have your local customizations, and like how do you sort of manage those in terms of like maybe pulling the latest that you and other community members are sharing without maybe overriding or complicating your customizations people have made locally?
So I haven't had many situations where people have added too much that I've pulled back in just because it's so early. I think that'll start happening a lot more in like the next months and year. But right now it's mostly me pushing out.
Yeah, but if you're like a user of Pi and you maybe are like trying to balance those changes with the ones you've made locally.
Oh, right. Yeah, I haven't found a good solution for that yet. We are actively working on that inside of the Pi repo in the community and the discussions. We're trying to figure out if that looks like a minor fork situation, if that looks like a side-by-side type thing, where their Pi agent have it sitting on the side, all the new stuff, and then it will migrate over to the authoritative one. So that's one option for that.
Yeah, I guess it could also be standard Git and GitHub workflows in terms of like you fork Pi, you have your private fork in a private repo, which you then commit all of your personal or like stuff specific to you. And then you're just periodically merging in from the remote that is like the official public Pi, merging it into your private one.
That's right. I mean, and you can have your agent do that and decide what fits for you, right?
Keith Hudlet had a great point. Maybe you have like a local folder that gets Git ignored where people can create customizations and then still get upstream stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Also, just shout out to Keith. He and the Trail of Bits folks are doing awesome AI work. So check out their blog. I enjoy reading it very much.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're doing amazing stuff. Crushed it at the AI XCC as well.
Absolutely. So there are still a lot of questions, but I wonder perhaps for time's sake if we might want to answer them like asynchronously after, or how are you feeling?
Yeah, I think we can get some of those together, and yeah, maybe we do another session or something, or send them out. Yeah, I think async is the way to go.
Yeah, people seem to have a bunch of excellent questions and no shortage of them. So also your workflow and how things work dramatically changes every few weeks in terms of it gets better and better. Happy to do this again, maybe in a few months or so.
Cool.
Yeah, Daniel, thank you so much. This was awesome. Tons of stuff to dig into. So really appreciate your time. Have an awesome rest of your day and talk soon.